Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take your sources and, well, we dive deep. We pull out the key insights, the surprising bits, try to make sense of it all. And today, we're looking at something pretty intense. It's about punishment, how it's changed, and what that tells us about power. Just to set the scene, imagine this. France, March 2nd, 1757. There's a man, Robert-François Damiens.
Right.
He's condemned for trying to kill the king. And his sentence, it's almost unbelievable.
Which is incredibly graphic.
Yeah. Flesh torn with red-hot pincers, his hand burned with sulfur, molten lead, boiling oil, resin poured into the wound.
Horrific.
Then drawn and quartered by 4 horses. And even that apparently didn't go smoothly.
No, the accounts are gruesome. The horses struggled.
And after all that, burn the body, scatter the ashes. And this wasn't like hidden away. It was a public show. People watched this.
A popular spectacle, yes.
Okay, so let's unpack this. How on earth did we get from that, these incredibly brutal public tortures, to our modern prison systems, which seem, much more humane? Was it just people getting kinder, developing more empathy? Or is there something else going on, something about power itself changing?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. It's a really fascinating transformation. We're going to look at how punishment shifted its focus, moving away from attacking the physical body.
Right.
Towards something different, often called the soul or the mind.
The soul.
And how this whole new science of the individual kind of popped up from all these administrative details and what it all means for how power works, even now.
Okay, let's start back there with that 18th century scene. That French word is souplesse.
Yes, souplesse.
Damien's execution, you mentioned the horses struggling. It took ages, didn't it? They even had to bring in more horses.
That's right. The accounts mention it took repeated attempts, repositioning the horses, adding 2 more to make 6, and even then...
He was still alive.
For a time, yes. The executioner eventually had to use a knife to sever the limbs.
Unbelievable. And Damien's himself, he apparently spoke at the end.
He did, reportedly asking the executioners to kiss him, telling them not to swear, praying for them. Yeah.
So what was the point of making it so public, so agonizingly long?
Well, it's interesting. That word souplesse, it covered both the long torture and the public execution. And then there was la question,
which was
judicial torture, specifically to get a confession. So you see, pain and finding the truth were completely tangled together.
Okay.
These spectacles, they weren't just about making someone suffer horribly. They had a dual political purpose, a very calculated one.
Political? How so? What was the logic behind this terror?
Well, first it was about marking the victim, literally branding them with infamy. The public torture, the scars, it was all a ceremony showing the law's total force.
Leaving a mark.
Exactly. And it often went beyond death, burning the body, scattering ashes. It was about making the punishment unforgettable, a symbol of the law's reach.
Okay, that's one purpose. What was the second?
The second, and maybe the more critical one, was about reactivating the power of the sovereign, the king.
Ah.
See, in that system, a crime wasn't just breaking a rule. It was seen as a direct attack on the king's person. His authority.
An insult to the crown.
Precisely. So the execution became this ritual of terror. It showed the sovereign's overwhelming power, his physical strength beating down on the body of his enemy.
So it was theater. A power play.
Very much so. Often with soldiers, military hardware surrounding the scaffold, a clear display of armed force backing up the king's justice.
Okay, so it's this big performance of power. But they still had to decide who was guilty in the first place, right?
Yeah.
How do they figure out the truth in a system so focused on spectacle?
Well, they had this very complex and very secret system of legal proofs.
Legal proofs.
Yeah, think of it like a kind of weird math. Proofs had different categories: true, direct, indirect, conjectural, manifest, imperfect, slight.
Wow, okay.
And they had rules for combining them, like 2 semi-full proofs added up to a complete proof.
Seriously?
Like a legal arithmetic. Kind of, yeah. The point wasn't necessarily objective fact-finding as we might think of it now. It was a formula known only to the experts designed to produce a confession.
And confession was key.
Hugely important, often extracted through torture, la question. It was seen as the accused voluntarily participating in producing the truth.
Voluntarily? Under torture?
It's a twisted logic, I know. The speaking and, if necessary, suffering body was seen as guaranteeing the truth. Pain and truth were bound together in this ritualistic battle.
Chilling.
Yeah.
So this whole spectacle, the torture, the proofs, how did the actual public, the crowd watching, react? Were they just terrified?
That was the goal, certainly. Terrorize them into obedience. But it often didn't work out that way.
Uh,
Executions could spark riots, rejection, especially if people felt the conviction was unfair.
like if the person was popular or seemed unjustly accused?
Exactly. Or if it was a poor person getting a harsh sentence that a rich person might avoid, there was often solidarity, especially for petty offenders, thieves, vagrants, and that solidarity was a political problem for the sovereign.
A threat to their power.
Definitely.
Mm.
And then you had the crime literature pamphlets, broadsheets that sometimes turned criminals into folk heroes, symbols of resistance. So the spectacle could absolutely backfire.
Right, creating more disorder instead of reinforcing order.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of leads us to the next big shift, the disappearance of these public executions.
Exactly. It was gradual. Things like the attitude honorable or the pillory were abolished in France around the late 18th, early 19th century, though corporal punishment, like flogging, stuck around longer.
And we tend to think, oh, society just got more humane, but you're saying it's more complicated.
Much more complicated. It wasn't just about humanization, though that might have played a role for some. It was fundamentally tied into a broader shift in political economy.
Political economy.
Yeah. The change wasn't just making punishment less harsh, it was changing what punishment was, what its target was.
Okay, so what was the new target, if not the body?
It shifted towards reaching something other than the body, the
Yeah.
soul, the mind, the character of the person. Punishment became more about an economy of suspended rights, constraints, privations, taking away liberty.
So less about the physical act, more about the person who did it.
Precisely. Their passions, instincts, their maladjustments, their drives. Judgment started involving all these assessments, diagnostic, prognostic, normative judgments about the criminal himself.
The person becomes the focus. And who carries out this new kind of punishment if the executioner is fading out?
A whole new group steps in. An army of technicians, you could say.
Technicians.
Warders, doctors, chaplains, psychiatrists, psychologists, educators. Their job, in a way, was to reassure everyone that the body and pain weren't the main point anymore.
Like you said, doctors monitoring executions even now.
Exactly, or giving tranquilizers. It's about managing the process, not just inflicting pain. And punishment started, including things like probation, mandatory therapy, security measures, aimed at fixing the person's criminal tendencies.
So these reformers back then, they weren't just trying to be nicer. What was their actual aim?
They were worried about the justice system being chaotic, inefficient, paralyzed by the king's arbitrary power. Their goal wasn't necessarily to punish less, but to punish better.
Punish better. How?
More universally, more predictably. They wanted to insert the power to punish more effectively, more deeply into the social body, make it systematic.
Go make it efficient.
And this new economy of punishment, it changes law, too. The goal became preventing crime from happening again. So laws had to be public, clear, stable rules, not secret whims.
Makes sense.
And those old ways of finding truth torture, the weird proof math, they didn't fit. They needed methods that seemed more rational, more certain, understandable to everyone.
And how did this connect to, like, social class? You mentioned the bourgeoisie earlier.
Right. This is key. The rising middle class, they might have turned a blind eye to certain illegalities of rights, tax dodging, fraud among their own ranks.
Okay.
But they became very concerned about illegalities of property, theft, vagrancy, things that threaten their assets.
Protecting their stuff.
Exactly. This led to a demand for more rigorous, constant policing focused specifically on property crimes. It created a kind of split targeting certain kinds of illegality, often those associated with the poor.
So punishment starts getting tailored and focused on the individual. Did they start thinking about, like, predicting who might be a criminal?
Yes, definitely. Punishment started being adjusted based not just on the crime, but on the defendant, their personality, their past, their attitude. This opens the door for psychological ideas to enter the legal system.
And did this lead to any extreme ideas about control?
Oh, yeah. Some really chilling proposals, like Vermeil's Iron Spider.
Iron Spider.
For someone who killed their parent, the idea was a naked, blinded criminal, locked in an iron cage, hung up in public, exposed to the elements until they died.
Good grief. That's almost a return to spectacle, but different. More about relentless control.
Exactly. A vision of a new kind of punitive city, total control, total visibility.
Which brings us to this idea of discipline. We're moving from the executioner's block to something more subtle, more pervasive, controlling the details.
Precisely. This is the rise of disciplines. These are meticulous methods for controlling the body's operations, making it Docile.
Docile, meaning obedient.
Obedient, yes,
Got
but
it.
also useful, transformed, improved. It's this political anatomy aimed at increasing the body's economic utility while decreasing its political threat, making it efficient and compliant.
Like turning people into cogs in a machine.
In a way, yes. It's about dissecting behavior, breaking it down, and then rebuilding it for maximum efficiency and obedience.
Okay, so how did these disciplines actually work? Where did you see them?
They popped up everywhere. In schools, hospitals, barracks, factories. It was about controlling space, time, and movement very precisely.
Controlling space.
How? Through things like enclosure, physically confining people in specific places like schools or factories, then partitioning, dividing those spaces into small individual units like cells or assigned workstations, making supervision easier.
So everyone has their designated spot.
Right, and functional sites organizing the layout for specific tasks like an assembly line, making movement efficient and predictable.
Okay, space. What about time and movement?
Controlling activity. Think of strict timetables. Military drills, school schedules dictating every minute, bells ringing for every action.
Regimented.
Very. And the temporal elaboration of the act, breaking down every single movement into tiny, precise steps with rules for direction, duration, order, like how a soldier holds a rifle or marches.
Micromanaging movement itself.
Exactly. And the correlation of body and gesture, figuring out the most efficient posture, the fastest way to make a specific movement. It creates this body tool, body machine ideal.
Wow. It's incredibly detailed.
It is. Then there's the organization of Genesis structuring learning over time, from simple actions to complex ones, always pushing towards greater skill and submission. And finally, composition of forces, combining these disciplined bodies to create a more powerful collective force, like an army unit or a factory floor.
And how do you command these forces?
Through a precise system of command using signalization, brief, clear signals, automatic responses, minimal explanation, minimal questioning, like training animals almost.
It's a very mechanical view of humans. Was there like a perfect model for this kind of
So
control?
there was Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon.
Ah, the panopticon. I've heard of this. The circular prison design.
Exactly. The circular building, cells around the edge, central observation tower. The genius, or the horror, depending on your view, is the supervisor can see in, but the inmates can't see the supervisor.
So you never know if you're being watched.
Precisely. It creates this state of conscious and permanent visibility. Power functions automatically because you internalize the surveillance. You discipline yourself because you might be watched at any moment.
That's unsettlingly efficient. And Bentham saw this applying beyond prisons.
Oh, yes. Hospitals, workshops, schools. Anywhere you needed to manage or alter behavior, it became this general principle of a new political anatomy.
Did this kind of thinking spread out into society generally, beyond specific institutions?
It did, largely through the development of the police. In the 18th century, the police became a key tool for extending these disciplines everywhere.
How so?
They started concerning themselves with the dust of events, minor details, everyday behaviors, suspicions. It involved this constant, exhaustive surveillance, registering everything.
So not just catching criminals after the fact, but watching everyone all the time.
Pretty much, this interstitial discipline, filling the gaps between institutions. It's like society shifted, as one writer put it, from a society of spectacle to a society of surveillance.
And this constant watching led to another key technique, the examination.
Exactly. The examination tests, inspections, medical checkups became fundamental. Think hospital rounds becoming constant observation, daily quizzes in school.
Creating records.
Meticulous archives on every individual. This power of writing documented everything, behavior, skills, potential problems, even diagnosing a supposedly delinquent character.
And this connects to the human sciences.
Absolutely. Psychology, psychiatry, criminology, they find their technical matrix right here in these disciplinary practices of examination and documentation. The very way we categorize and study people grew out of these methods of control.
Okay, so we've gone from the public execution to this subtle, pervasive discipline, surveillance examination. And that brings us squarely to the prison.
Right. The prison, which initially wasn't the obvious choice for reformers, quickly becomes the dominant punishment.
Why? Why prison?
It wasn't just seen as locking someone up. It was envisioned as this perfect machine for applying all these new disciplinary techniques. A differentiated and finalized mechanism designed to change the guilty person, to amend them.
The ultimate disciplinary institution.
You could say that. Omnidisciplinary, taking charge of everything: training, work, conduct, morals. Uninterrupted action, total power. Isolation was key, cutting off external influences, making the prisoner totally dependent and controllable.
And work in prison. You said earlier it wasn't really about profit.
Not primarily. Penal labor was seen as a tool for transformation. A machine, they called it, to turn the violent, agitated, unreflective convict into a predictable, orderly part.
Making machine men.
Yes, and proletarians. Instilling habits of order, obedience, respect for property, often using wages or the idea of wages as a moral tool, training them for industrial society.
So the prison starts judging not just the crime, but the person's whole character, their potential for change.
Exactly. It went beyond the court sentence. Prison administrations developed systems to modulate penalties based on the inmate's behavior and perceived moral progress.
Like the progressive systems.
Right. Moving inmates through different stages, trial, punishment, reward, based on how they performed. The prison itself became this autonomous mechanism for judging and shaping the individual.
And this process, you argue, actually created something new, not just punished criminals.
Yes, this is a crucial point. The penitentiary system didn't just punish offenders, it produced the delinquent.
The delinquent. How is that different from a criminal?
The delinquent isn't just someone who committed a crime. They're characterized by their life, their whole being. They have a kernel of danger, instincts, tendencies, a specific character that makes them criminal.
Ah, so it's an identity, not just an action.
Precisely. And criminology emerged as the science to define this person, classify them, study them, creating typologies of convicts based on intelligence, personality, etc.
So the prison creates this category, delinquent, which then justifies more surveillance and control.
Exactly. It creates this neat, observable category, authenticated by science, that the criminal justice system can then manage, which leads to this closed circuit.
The loop you mentioned.
Yeah, police surveillance feeds offenders into the prison. The prison turns them into delinquents. These delinquents then become the prime targets and sometimes even informers for the police, who then send more offenders back to prison.
A self-perpetuating system.
Absolutely.
But, as you said, almost as soon as prisons became widespread, people were saying they failed. They didn't stop crime, they created repeat offenders, they were schools for crime.
That's the great paradox. From the 1820s, 1840s onwards, constant critique. Yet for 150 years, the answer has always been more prison, just applied better.
So the failure is actually its success. How does that work?
The argument is that the prison succeeds precisely because it fails in those overt ways. Its real success is in separating out and managing delinquency as a specific, contained category.
Isolating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isolating it from broader social unrest or political challenges. It makes certain forms of illegality visible, manageable, politically less dangerous, and economically kind of marginal. It differentiates illegalities.
Let's make this concrete. You mentioned the last chain gang in 1836.
Right. A final burst of the old spectacle. Convicts paraded through towns, acting out their crimes, shouting defiance. It was chaotic, almost festive, but also showed the danger of public punishment. It could incite disorder.
So what replaced it immediately?
The very next year, 1837, the cell carriage. Essentially, a prison on wheels.
Moving panopticon.
Exactly. Individual cells, total silence, constant surveillance, even during transport. No communication, no spectacle, just individual, invisible control. A perfect symbol of the shift.
What about individuals caught in this? Lacenaire.
Lacenaire is presented as the sort of archetype of the new delinquent. An educated man, ruined bourgeois, whose potential for political dissent gets channeled into individual crime.
And how is he neutralized?
His story, his crimes, even his execution became a kind of morbid fascination, an aesthetics of crime consumed by the upper classes. It turned him into a curiosity, not a threat.
And the opposite end, the young vagabond, Beas.
Beas, just 13, when questioned by a judge about why he didn't have a home, a job, a schedule, he basically calls his indiscipline liberty.
Wow.
It's this amazing moment, a direct challenge to the whole emerging disciplinary system. He sees freedom where the system sees deviance.
Powerful. So this system, it reaches beyond the prison walls, doesn't it? This carceral network.
Absolutely. It's not just about prisons. It's about integrating all these disciplinary places, schools, hospitals, workshops, reformatories like Maître, a famous French reformatory that explicitly combined models of the family, the army, the workshop, the school, and the court. Total institution.
So it creates this web.
A web, yes. A slow, continuous, imperceptible gradation from minor disorder to actual crime, linking punishment with anything considered abnormal. It makes the whole system seem natural, inevitable, legitimate, because it's woven into the fabric of society.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We started with the gruesome spectacle of Damien's execution.
Sovereign power displayed on the body.
Right. And we've tracked this shift towards a hidden, meticulous system focused on the individual's mind, their soul, discipline, surveillance, examination.
Crude force replaced by subtle techniques of control. The criminal becomes the delinquent, studied, managed, classified.
And this isn't just some dusty history lesson. You're saying this is the underlying political anatomy of our world today.
That's the argument. This disciplinary power, refined in places like the Panopticon, spread through policing and this wider carceral network, it's become fundamental to how modern society operates.
And the very sciences we use to understand ourselves, psychology, criminology, were shaped by this need to observe, classify, and control.
Their origins are deeply intertwined with this infinite examination and compulsory objectification, yes.
So a final thought for everyone listening.
Maybe think about where these subtle mechanisms, normalization, surveillance, classification, show up in your own life. In your workplace, online, in education. How do they subtly shape what gets defined as normal or deviant right now, today?
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for taking us on this deep dive. Really fascinating, if disturbing stuff.
It certainly makes you look at things differently.
It does. Okay, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.